My name is Ethan Turner. I'm 24 years old, and in my family, I've always been the odd one out. The Turners are a wealthy, well-established family. My father's a renowned lawyer, my older brother, Derek, is a high-powered banker, and my cousins are all either doctors or lawyers. Then there's me. I graduated with a philosophy degree, which I'm sure everyone at dinner last night thought was a joke. They were right, in a way. I've always felt like I was the one who didn't fit the mold, the one who wasn't good enough. My family never hid their disappointment in me. But something changed last night, at the dinner table, when Derek couldn't stop laughing at my graduation. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, is that I had a secret, a very big one that's about to change everything. I might not be the one they expect, but I'm the one they're going to fear. The envelope I handed Derek last night? It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was my reckoning. The night started as it always did, tension thickening the air, the sparkling chandelier overhead casting shadows on the polished oak of the dining table. My mother fussed over the spread of perfectly arranged dishes, roast lamb, mashed potatoes, fresh greens, and salad. Everything looked impeccable, just like she wanted it. I didn't mind. I wasn't here for the food, I was here for the validation. As I walked into the dining room, my cousins Derek and Sarah exchanged knowing glances. Sarah's eyes glimmered with that familiar mix of smugness and curiosity. I was used to it. They were always the ones who succeeded. I was just the one who never quite measured up. Look who finally showed up, Derek teased as I sat down. And with a degree that'll take him nowhere. He laughed, a sound that echoed too loudly for my liking. But it was Derek's laughter that set the tone. He had always been the one to mock me, his easy smile hiding his sharp tongue. Sarah, sitting beside him, added, honestly, Ethan, philosophy? What's next? A job at a coffee shop, trying to make people understand the meaning of life. The table erupted with laughter. My heart sank, but I kept my face steady, forcing a smile. There it was again. The casual dismissal. The jokes they thought were harmless but always felt like barbed wire to me. The harsh reality was, I had never been the family's shining star. No one cared that I'd gotten my degree at all. They cared about the right degrees, the right job titles, and the right salaries. Everything I did, everything I ever tried to be, felt like a joke to them. But that night, something shifted. I wasn't just going to sit back and take their jabs anymore. Maybe I'll be a barista at that coffee shop, I said, leaning in slightly, a challenge in my voice. Maybe I'll open a cafe with a philosophy twist. You could come by for some coffee and a chat about life's great mysteries. The laughter quieted just a little. But it wasn't enough. I needed more than that. I needed something that would make them feel what I had been feeling for years. You think you can talk philosophy to your latte customers while Derek's closing multi-million-dollar deals? Sarah snickered, leaning back in her chair. Maybe, I replied, my voice cold now. But I think the joke's on you, Sarah. You wouldn't be laughing so hard if you knew what I have in my hands. That got their attention. What do you mean? Derek shot me a questioning look, though I could see the flicker of unease behind his usually confident eyes. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope I had been carrying with me for days. The white envelope looked completely ordinary, but to me, it was a symbol of everything I had been holding back, the truth about the inheritance, the secrets buried in my family's past. I think it's time you knew something, I said, placing the envelope in front of Derek. Something none of you know about me. He stared at the envelope, his smirk faltering for just a moment. The air around the table seemed to freeze, the weight of the moment settling in like a heavy fog. What's this? Derek finally asked, though I could tell he was already afraid of what was coming. I leaned back in my chair, eyes never leaving his. Open it, I said simply. There was a long pause as Derek hesitated. The room was silent, the only sound the occasional clink of silverware on plates, a reminder of how everything had come to a halt. My family, my cousins, my mother, watched Derek as he slowly tore open the envelope. The room seemed to hold its breath. Derek scanned the document, his face shifting from confusion to disbelief. This can't be real. I watched as the color drained from his face. I couldn't suppress a small, satisfied smile. You see, I said, my voice cold, it's not just a piece of paper. It's an inheritance. One that doesn't go to Derek. Or Sarah. Or anyone else in this room. Derek's jaw tightened, his hand gripping the paper so hard his knuckles turned white. The silence was deafening. What are you talking about? He demanded, his voice strained. This is some kind of joke, right? No, I replied, leaning forward, my gaze sharp. It's not a joke. The inheritance was left to me. And the will says, you don't get a dime. I knew it was time to step back, to let them process the chaos I had just unleashed. The laughter that had filled the room moments ago had turned to stunned silence. Derek still stood, clutching the paper, his face pale. Sarah looked from Derek to me, her eyes narrowed. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of power. But I also felt something else, something darker. A warning. I wasn't just threatening their inheritance, I was threatening something much more dangerous. And I was already starting to feel the cost. I turned to look around the room, noticing the looks of disbelief on my mother's face, the tension hanging in the air like a blade ready to fall. What I had just set in motion wasn't going to stay within these walls. This isn't over, I said quietly. Not by a long shot. The silence in the room stretched, heavy and suffocating, as Derek continued to stare at the envelope, his hand frozen in place. His fingers were white, trembling as if the paper itself might bite him. My family, once so full of laughter and biting remarks, now watched the scene unfold with a mix of confusion and shock. No one knew how to react. No one except me. You think this is a joke? Derek finally broke the silence, his voice strained, almost pleading. His eyes darted over the document again, trying to make sense of it. He glanced at his sister Sarah, who was watching with a tight, controlled expression, her lips pressed into a thin line. Do you really think I would joke about this? I asked, my voice colder now, the anger I'd kept buried for years finally surfacing. This is your inheritance, Derek. Not mine. Not Sarah's. Mine. I watched his face twist in disbelief. His smirk, the one that had been so easy and effortless, faltered. This can't be real, he muttered, eyes scanning the legal document like it might change the second time around. He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw the hint of genuine fear flicker across his face. You're lying. Someone's playing a prank. But this was no prank. And I was done playing games. I'd been waiting for this moment, the moment I could finally stop hiding in their shadow. I had always been the family's disappointment, the one who couldn't measure up. Philosophy degrees, self-doubt, years of pushing my dreams to the back burner. But everything I had done, everything I'd endured, had been building to this moment. The moment I got to see the look on their faces as the truth hit them. Ethan, this isn't right, Sarah spoke up, her voice suddenly tight. I didn't miss the way she shifted uncomfortably in her seat. What are you trying to pull here? You're not. I interrupted her, leaning in, my gaze steady and unforgiving. It's real, Sarah. You've spent your whole life looking down on me, trying to show me how much better you are, how much smarter, richer, more successful. But I'm the one who's getting this. Not you. Not Derek. Me. There was a fire in my chest, burning with a ferocity I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer just a quiet, overlooked son. I wasn't the invisible younger brother. I was the one holding the cards now. I could feel the power shift in the room, palpable, like an electric charge. My family had always taken me for granted, treated me like a joke. But now, it was their turn to laugh. But then I saw it. Derek's hand trembling again, his face blanching further. Something wasn't right. Before I could say another word, Derek stood up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sharp sound that broke through the tension. He moved toward me quickly, his hand reaching for the paper. "This doesn't make sense," he said, almost pleading, voice high. "This isn't real. Who's doing this? Is it you? Did you forge this?" I took a deep breath, letting the moment linger. "You always thought you were the smarter one, huh? The one who had everything figured out. But you're wrong, Derek. The one who's going to be laughing in the end is me." I watched as he scrambled for control, trying to steady himself. His face was pale, his mind clearly racing. "We'll get this checked. I'll have this looked at by someone who actually knows what they're doing," he stammered. "By someone who already knows? Or by someone you trust to bury the truth?" I didn't let him off the hook. "Because trust me, Derek, I already know who's behind all this. And you won't be able to stop it. No matter how much money, or power, or fake smiles you throw at it." The look in his eyes shifted, no longer the confident, mocking expression that had greeted me at dinner. Now, there was only uncertainty, panic even, flickering beneath the surface. He snapped his gaze to Sarah. "This can't be happening, Sarah. You know what this means, right?" Sarah's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. But there was something cold about it, something that made me question if she had known all along. Had she been complicit? Was this really about the inheritance, or was it something much darker? Her eyes locked with mine, a slow realization dawning. "You really thought you were going to get away with this, didn't you?" I felt my stomach drop. What was she talking about? Before I could answer, the room felt even colder. The laughter, the tension, the uncertainty, all of it suddenly turned into a sharp, suffocating silence. I looked at my family, at the faces that had once seemed like a safe haven, only to realize they were all hiding something. There were lies here, lies bigger than I could have ever imagined. Then, as if the entire world had shifted, Sarah's phone buzzed loudly on the table, cutting through the eerie silence. She glanced down, her face paling. It's the lawyer. I need to take this." She quickly excused herself, rising from the table with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. A sudden wave of dread washed over me. What had she just seen on that screen? What was she trying to hide? I didn't trust her anymore, not after everything that had just unfolded. The door clicked shut behind her. I turned to Derek, who was still standing, his expression a mix of disbelief and fear. He had nothing to say now. No sharp words. No smirks. Just silence. I stayed still, my gaze fixed on the spot where Sarah had just been sitting. Something about this wasn't adding up. I'd gotten what I wanted, exposing the truth, the inheritance, but now I realized I might have just opened a door to something far more dangerous. As the seconds ticked by, my chest tightened. "She knows something," I muttered under my breath. And just like that, I heard the unmistakable sound of tires squealing from outside the house. Someone was leaving in a hurry. It was only then that I understood. The game had changed. The truth I had uncovered was only the beginning. And they were coming for me. The silence that followed Sarah's abrupt exit lingered in the room like a fog that refused to clear. Derek, still clutching the wool with a vice grip, was the first to speak, his voice a mixture of disbelief and panic. This doesn't make sense," he muttered, looking over the document again. "It's gotta be fake. Someone's messing with us." His voice was getting louder, a desperate edge creeping in, but he couldn't mask the tremor in his voice. I stood my ground, the weight of the situation beginning to settle in. I'd always imagined that revealing this secret would be satisfying, but the reality was far more complicated. Every second of tension felt like a slow burn. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. "This isn't a prank, Derek," I said, keeping my voice steady. "This is real. You're not getting anything. Not a dime. Not a cent." He glared at me, his face contorting in anger. "You think you're gonna just take everything from us? From me?" He spat the words like venom. "You didn't earn it," I replied, my words cutting sharper than I intended. This isn't yours. It never was. I turned away from him, trying to maintain my composure. The weight of the envelope in my pocket seemed to press down harder now, the secret I had carried with me for months becoming more burdensome with every passing moment. There was more at stake now than just a fortune. Something was shifting beneath the surface, something dark, something I had only begun to understand. "I'll get this checked out," Derek said, his voice trembling as he walked to the corner of the room, clearly trying to regain control. "I'll find someone to look over it. This is a damn fraud." I barely heard him. My mind was spinning. What had just happened with Sarah? Her sudden phone call, the way she practically ran out of the room, all of it felt off. What was she hiding? I didn't have time to dwell on it. The stakes had changed. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about power, about uncovering the truth. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized I might not like what I found. Suddenly, the door opened again. It was Sarah. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. She didn't meet my gaze as she stepped into the room, shutting the door softly behind her. "Sarah," I said, my voice firm. "What the hell is going on? What's so important that you had to leave in the middle of this?" She hesitated, the tension in her posture betraying her calm facade. "Ethan," she started, her voice strained. "There's something you need to know. Something about Dad." The mention of our fathers sent a shiver down my spine. I was already reeling from the revelation of the will, but now, with Sarah's words hanging in the air, it felt like the ground was crumbling beneath me. "What about Dad?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's not just about the inheritance," Sarah said, her voice trembling. She glanced at Derek, who was still pacing the room, and then back at me, her gaze filled with an unsettling mixture of fear and guilt. "There are things he did. Things that are still affecting us. Everything we've built, it's based on lies, Ethan. Dad's been covering things up for years. And now, with the will, with what you just found, it's all coming to light." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean? What lies?" Before she could answer, Derek stormed forward, his face contorted in fury. No more games. I don't know what she's feeding you, Ethan, but it's all bullshit. This is my family's legacy, and I'm not going to let you ruin it." His anger was palpable, but something in his eyes told me he was as scared as he was angry. "You're scared, Derek," I said quietly. "And you should be." I turned back to Sarah, my eyes searching hers. "What aren't you telling me?" She swallowed hard, her hands shaking as she wrung them together. "There's more. Our father didn't just leave you the inheritance. He made deals. Big ones. With people we shouldn't have known. People who now want what he promised them. The estate isn't just money, Ethan. It's a damn mess. And you've just walked right into it." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "What do you mean? Deals with who?" She glanced nervously at Derek, who had gone unnaturally quiet. Then, with a deep breath, she said, "I think you need to talk to Barbara. She's the lawyer handling everything. She knows the full extent of it, but you have to be careful. She's been part of this from the beginning. I never trusted her, but she's the key to understanding what's really going on." Suddenly, it all clicked. The secrecy. The tension. The constant whispers behind closed doors. Everything was tied together by one thing, greed. But the deeper I looked, the more I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about power. It always had been. I turned to face Derek. "This isn't over. It's just beginning." I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. My heart skipped a beat as I pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was an unknown number. Without thinking, I answered. "Ethan Turner?" The voice on the other end was low, hushed, and unmistakably familiar. "You don't know me. But you're in over your head. The will wasn't the worst of it. And the people you're dealing with aren't people you want to cross. The line went dead. I stared at the screen, my hand trembling. This wasn't just about an inheritance anymore. This was a warning. And it was only going to get worse. The phone call hung in the air like a guillotine, slicing through the silence that had settled in the aftermath of Sarah's exit. I stood there for a moment, frozen, the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. I had expected something, resentment, maybe even a confrontation, but not this. Not a warning. The unknown number was still displayed on the screen, and my mind raced. Who was this? A threat? A warning from someone deeper within the mess my family had become? I was already on edge, the tension of the last few days wearing me thin. And now this. The will was just the beginning. The words echoed in my head. It wasn't just the inheritance anymore. Something darker was at play, something my family had been hiding from me for years. I dropped my phone onto the table, the screen flashing before my eyes, but it wasn't enough to distract me from the heavy, suffocating feeling growing in my chest. The truth was a moving target, and I was barely hanging on to it. The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my spiral. I didn't even need to check the peephole, I knew who it was. Barbara Green, my uncle's lawyer, stood in front of my apartment door, her figure imposing even through the glass. She had been involved in my uncle's affairs for years, but something about her cold, calculating demeanor had always set me on edge. I hesitated. Opening the door meant opening a new chapter, one I wasn't sure I was ready for. But the truth wasn't going to wait. I opened the door. "Ethan, we need to talk," she said, her voice low and steady. She didn't wait for an invitation, stepping inside as if she owned the place. "This isn't something you should have seen. The will, it's only the beginning. And the stakes are much higher than you think." I stared at her, trying to steady my breath. "What are you talking about?" "My father. He wasn't just hiding an inheritance. Was he?" The words felt strange in my mouth, like I was already losing control. Barbara paused, then sat down at the table, her eyes never leaving mine. "There's much more at play here, Ethan. Your father wasn't just protecting an inheritance. He was involved in something much deeper. Something illegal." The air in the room shifted. My breath caught. "What do you mean?" Her fingers tapped against the table. "There's money, Ethan. More than you could ever imagine. Hidden assets, offshore accounts, everything is tied together. Your father was laundering money for years. And now, with your uncle's death, everything is coming to a head." I felt the floor shift beneath me. "Money laundering? You're telling me my family has been involved in something illegal all this time?" The words felt like acid, burning as they left my lips. "Yes," Barbara said, her tone unwavering. "And it's worse than you think. The inheritance, the will, it's all a smokescreen. The people your father and your uncle were dealing with, they're not going to let this go. And now, you've stepped into it. Whether you like it or not, you're a part of this now." I stood there, the weight of her words crashing down on me. "So what do you want from me?" Barbara leaned forward, her eyes cold. "I want to help you, Ethan. But you need to understand something. If you don't play the game, if you don't follow through, you won't just lose everything. Your life will be in danger." She paused, letting the words sink in. "People die for this kind of money, Ethan." I could hear the distant hum of traffic outside, the faint noise of the city that had never seemed so far away. "You're asking me to..." "What? Join them? Help cover this up?" I could feel my pulse quickening, a mixture of anger and fear rising in my chest. Barbara stood up, smoothing her skirt as she straightened her back. "No. I'm asking you to survive, Ethan. You can't just walk away from this. There are people who will kill to protect what your father and uncle built. If you want to keep breathing, you have to play by their rules." I could feel my stomach twisting. My entire life, I had tried to escape the shadows of my family. But now, it seemed like those shadows were swallowing me whole. I didn't ask for this, I said through clenched teeth. I just wanted to find out the truth. And now you have, she replied, her voice cold and final. But the truth has a price. And you've already paid part of it. Don't make the mistake of thinking you can back out now. I watched her leave, her heels clicking against the floor, the door closing softly behind her. The weight of the conversation lingered in the air like smoke. My hands trembled as I stood there, unable to move. Was I really in this? Was this what it had come to? Money laundering, criminal dealings, my family, the people I had trusted, had built this empire of lies, and now I was entangled in it. I glanced over at the envelope on the table. The truth wasn't just about the will. It was bigger than I had ever imagined. The money, the lies, the people involved. I had just stepped into a world that I didn't understand, and it was a world that would do anything to protect itself. I needed to act. Fast. There was no turning back now. And then, just as I thought I had a moment to breathe, I heard it, my phone buzzing again. The screen flashed with an unknown number. I answered without thinking. Ethan Turner? A voice I didn't recognize, low and gravelly. We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow at the usual place. Don't try anything stupid, or I'll make sure you regret it. The call ended before I could respond. My head spun. The game was just beginning. I stepped into the night air, the weight of the day pressing on my shoulders. Barbara's words echoed in my mind, her chilling warning about the people involved in my family's hidden dealings. Money laundering, offshore accounts, my family, the people I trusted, had built a fortress of lies, and I was now trapped within its walls. The phone call had been a wake-up call. I wasn't just dealing with a family inheritance anymore. There were people out there who would kill to protect what they had. And I was standing in their way. I couldn't trust anyone now. Not even Sarah. She knew more than she let on, and her sudden departure from the dinner had been a clear sign that something was wrong. I could feel her eyes on me, watching, waiting for me to make my next move. I needed answers. And there was only one person who could give them to me. The next morning, I found myself driving to the outskirts of the city. The place was a small, nondescript cafe, tucked between two rundown buildings. The kind of place where people go to talk quietly and disappear into the shadows. As I pulled into the parking lot, a car I didn't recognize was parked a few spaces away. It was sleek, black, and had the look of someone who didn't want to be seen. I parked quickly, my fingers gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My heart raced, the adrenaline kicking in. I had no idea what was waiting for me inside. But I couldn't back out now. Not after everything that had happened. The door chimed as I walked in, the sound sharp and unsettling. I scanned the room, but the place was empty except for one person sitting at the far corner. It was Nolan, a man I'd never met but had heard whispers about. He was a fixer, the kind of guy who could make problems disappear, at a cost. He looked up when I approached, his expression unreadable. He didn't smile, but his eyes were cold, calculating. You came, he said, his voice low. That's good. I wasn't sure you would. Why wouldn't I? I replied, sitting down across from him. You said you had answers. You're the one who called. Nolan leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. I'm not the one who called, Ethan. It wasn't me. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. But whoever did, they want you to be careful. There are things you don't understand yet. Things about your family, your father, your uncle. You're too deep now. I stared at him, confused. I don't care about the threats. I need answers. What was my father involved in? And why are people threatening me now? Nolan's lips curled into a thin smile. You're right to be angry. But you don't know the half of it. Your father wasn't just laundering money for some shadowy criminals. He was playing a much bigger game. A game with power, control over people who control far more than just money. You're in their crosshairs now. I felt my heart pound in my chest. Who are these people? Does the name Lloyd Turner mean anything to you? The name hit me like a slap. I knew that name, knew it well. Lloyd Turner was my grandfather, a man I had never met, but whose reputation had always hung over our family like a dark cloud. They said he was a kingmaker, a man who had done anything and everything to stay at the top. The truth about his death had always been shrouded in mystery, but one thing was certain: he had made enemies. Powerful enemies. Nolan must have seen the recognition in my eyes. That's right, he continued. Lloyd's past isn't just a skeleton in the closet. It's a ticking time bomb. He did business with people you don't want to cross. And your father inherited more than just assets. He inherited enemies. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. You're saying my father and my uncle were involved with criminals? That's what this is about. That's why people are after me. It's not just about the money, Ethan, Nolan said. It's about the power. The control. Your father was part of a network, a system that stretched far beyond what you can see. And now, they want it all back. And they'll do whatever it takes to make sure you don't get in their way. The air in the cafe seemed to grow thicker, heavier, as if the walls were closing in on me. How do you know all this? I asked, trying to steady my breath. Nolan's smile faded, replaced with a more serious look. Because I've been watching you, Ethan. And I'm not the only one. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Watching me? Yes. They've known you were going to be a problem from the start. The second you opened that envelope, they started paying attention. The weight of his words sank in. I wasn't just a participant in this mess, I was a target. And I didn't know who was watching me, who had the power to make me disappear without anyone noticing. The paranoia was crawling under my skin, making my heart race faster. A loud bang echoed through the door, and I turned quickly. My eyes widened as I saw two men walk in, their eyes scanning the room. They weren't looking at me directly, but the intensity of their gaze made my blood run cold. I had no doubt they were watching me now. Nolan's warning was clear. They're here, Nolan muttered under his breath, his voice cold. I stood up quickly, my mind spinning. What do you mean, they're here? Before I could ask anything else, Nolan was already on his feet, pulling me toward the back exit. You need to leave. Now. We moved quickly, through the kitchen, and out the back door. The cool air hit me like a slap, but I didn't have time to process anything. I could hear footsteps behind us, quick and deliberate. I glanced back. The men were following us. You've just been marked, Ethan. If you want to survive this, you need to get ahead of them. And fast. I turned to Nolan, but before I could speak, a sharp crack echoed through the alleyway. A gunshot. And just like that, everything I thought I knew was shattered. The gunshot echoed in the alleyway, slicing through the night like a jagged shard of glass. My heart raced, my mind scrambling to process the scene unfolding before me. Nolan yanked me into the shadows, his grip firm as he dragged me further into the darkness. What the hell was that? I gasped, trying to catch my breath. The sound of the bullets still rang in my ears, deafening, unforgiving. It's them, Nolan muttered, his voice strained. You've stepped into something far deeper than you understand. And now they're coming for you. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. 1 minute, I was chasing down the truth, trying to untangle my family's web of lies. The next, I was in the middle of a high-stakes game with deadly players who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. We moved fast, weaving through backstreets and dark alleys, every step feeling like it could be my last. I glanced back over my shoulder, paranoid, every shadow seeming to shift into a threat. Who had fired the shot? And more importantly, why had they missed? We reached a nondescript building on the edge of the city, its cracked windows and rusted doors barely noticeable in the dim light. Nolan pushed open the door with a force that made the hinges groan in protest. This way, he said, ushering me inside. We entered a small, darkened room, and Nolan locked the door behind us. I stood there for a moment, my mind reeling, trying to make sense of everything. The inheritance. The money laundering. The enemies my family had made. And now, a gunshot aimed at me. I didn't ask for this, I said, my voice hollow. I didn't ask for any of this. Nolan turned to face me, his expression hard. You didn't ask, but you're in it now. And you've made enemies, Ethan. You've made them scared. Scared enough to take action. He was right. This wasn't just about an inheritance anymore. It was about power, about control, and my family's dangerous entanglements had dragged me into a fight I wasn't ready for. I don't know how much longer I can keep you safe, Nolan said, pacing now, his voice rising. They're tracking you. They know where you are. If we don't act fast, you won't make it out of this alive. I felt the weight of his words settle over me. This wasn't a game anymore. I wasn't playing with family drama. I was playing with my life. I need to find Sarah, I said, my voice suddenly firm. She knows more than she's letting on. She knows what my father was really involved in. And she knows how deep this goes. Nolan stopped pacing and fixed me with a hard stare. Sarah? You trust her? Right now, I don't trust anyone, I said. But I need her to tell me the truth. I can't keep running blindly like this. I need to know what I'm up against. Nolan didn't respond right away. He just stared at me, studying me, as if weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. You're right about one thing, he said, his voice low. But trust me, Ethan, the truth you're after isn't something you're going to like. It's not just your family you need to worry about. There are people out there with power, people who can make you disappear without anyone ever knowing you were here. I swallowed hard, the gravity of the situation pressing down on me. What had my family gotten into? What had they been hiding all these years? And what was I about to uncover? I took a deep breath. I'll take my chances. I need to know what they've been hiding. I need to know how deep this rabbit hole goes. Nolan didn't say anything more. He just nodded, his face unreadable. Then you need to go now. You don't have much time. I didn't hesitate. I walked towards the door, every step feeling heavier than the last. I could feel the eyes on me, could almost hear the footsteps behind me, getting closer. I wasn't safe. Not here. Not anywhere. I opened the door and stepped out into the cold night. The air felt sharper now, the weight of everything I had learned hanging on my shoulders like a cloak of doom. As I walked through the alley, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I needed to find Sarah. I needed answers. But most of all, I needed to survive. I found her in the last place I expected, standing in the same cafe where I had met Nolan. She was sitting alone, her fingers nervously tapping on the table. When she saw me, her expression flickered, then hardened. I didn't want you to find out this way, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tell me everything, I demanded, my voice low, threatening. Now. Sarah hesitated, glancing around the room as if checking for anyone who might be listening. Dad didn't just leave behind money, she said. He left behind a legacy. A dangerous one. He was involved with people who would stop at nothing to protect what he built. I didn't want you to know, Ethan. I didn't want you to be a part of this. You're already part of it, Sarah, I said, my eyes narrowing. Just like me. She looked down at her hands, her shoulders sagging. I didn't want this life for you. But now, we're all in it together. I sat down across from her, trying to steady my breath. What happens now? She didn't answer at first. Instead, she just stared at me, as if trying to figure out how to make this right. But there was no making it right. There was no way out. The truth always catches up with you, Ethan, she finally said, her voice heavy. But be careful what you wish for. Some truths come with a price. The words hung in the air, thick with meaning. And for the first time in my life, I understood what they meant. I wasn't just a pawn in a family drama. I was a player in a game far bigger than I could have ever imagined. And the stakes? They were higher than I'd ever been prepared for. The price of truth? It was my life. And there was no going back now.